At the big number, the big graph, or the big chart of the day. And for that, I'm going to hand over to Francis.
So we like the big numbers, and it's a very big one this time. Let's swipe it in. 17.5 billion rand, which is the massive price tag on Vodacom's new proposed BEE initiative. Now, black shareholders, remember, already have a stake in Vodacom through the Yebo Yethu scheme, but that was concluded in 2008, and it's due to unwind in October this year. Now, what Vodacom wants to do is build on that scheme, and Yebo Yethu shareholders will be able to swap their shareholdings in the South African unit of Vodacom for a stake in the total group. The company also wants to increase its black shareholding to 20% overall by selling at least an additional 6% or so to investors like Royal Bafokeng, Thebe, as well as company staff. Now that involves costs, and it involves also maybe blocking of shares for the exclusive ownership of black South Africans, which is maybe why the share price is down significantly today. The deal still needs to be passed by shareholders, but Vodacom believes it is positive. The CEO earlier spoke to us. He told reporter Yebo Yethu that the current BEE scheme has benefited many South Africans.
Well, I mean, we've always had ambition to increase our BEE shareholding. I think the big part is that the current deal is coming to an end in October. So it's fortuitous for us to be able to do a deal now, and also to be able to give a healthy return to our existing shareholders, but also give them a chance to take part in the new deal as well.
YeboYethu, give me a rundown of how it was managed, how it was received, and the yields that it gave out.
Well, basically, we started the YeboYethu deal about 10 years ago. And people invested into the deal, and there was a lock-in period, and after that they could trade the shares on the BE exchange or could trade the shares which then later became on the BE exchange itself. And what's good is that shareholders will basically have a 6.7 times return from the money that they originally invested. So there's just over 7.5 billion rand that's been realized of net asset value that's been created in the current deal, of which 3 billion will be paid out in terms of a special dividend, and approximately 4.5 billion will basically be shares in let's call it in YeboYethu.
So BE shareholding or having shares for black people is a big thing, although something that's not quite penetrated into the lives of many. Do you know of some of the lives that you've changed as Vodacom, of shareholders who have held these shares and have sold them and have done phenomenal things?
Yes, I mean, there's 102,000 shareholders and 8,500 staff and ex-staff that have taken part in the deal. What's really humbling is when we have our AGM every year, and you know, ordinary people come in and they've invested into YeboYethu and into Vodacom. So, you know, I think it was important for us to make sure that we gave them a proper return on the investment that they put in. So you can see it's ordinary shareholders that have taken what could have been, you know, probably their life savings and put it into it. So, you know, to be able to give them a nice return, I think is good for us.
So there has been this debate for a very long time about staff share schemes and whether they're necessary or not, whether they make lives better or not for staff members. What have you seen as Vodacom, especially when you see now that this is going to be a new staff scheme? Are the workers excited?
Yes, I think, you know, allocating 3.5 billion rand towards staff, and I mean, this is going to be mainly, it's to all staff, but basically the majority of it goes to black staff, and there's a big proportionate difference between the two, and I think it really adds value from the perspective that you're allowing your staff who make this company run. You're giving them a chance, the ability to take part in the scheme as well. And you're changing their lives too. So I think that's quite meaningful. So, you know, And I think they'll be very happy with the payout that they've gotten from the current one, but also to take part in the new deal is quite exciting. I think also important to note that it's not a management deal.
Yeah.
And the board were very clear in making sure that it's not structured for management, for management. So 92% of the value goes to the general staff, if you like. Only 8% is, I think, in the first 3 levels of the company.
So eventually you want to see a 20% increase in BE ownership. How are you going to stagger this, stemming from this now between 5.8 and 6.25%? How do you plan to stagger it over time and over what timelines?
No, where we are today is that we're at 17% BE ownership, and effectively with this deal that takes us to 20%. So it's not growing by 20%.
It's not growing, it's already at
this deal takes you to 20%.
Right, so it is also one of the biggest, in fact, the biggest in the telecommunications industry. That does put you ahead of the competition, doesn't it?
It does, and I mean, obviously with Vodacom being a very big listed company, I mean, that 20% means that more than 50 billion rand would now sit in black hands, which I think is quite impressive.
And I see that you've decided to stay with your partners, Thebe Investments as well as Royal Bafokeng. What was the motivation behind not looking for new partners and retaining the current ones?
Well, I think it's twofold. One is that our shareholders have been very loyal in that, and have walked this journey for us for 10 years. It was important to give them the chance to one, realize some value, but also to take part in the new deal. And because there's a big amount of money, approximately 4.5 billion, after the dividend that they will have left, that is being reinvested, if you like, into the new YeboYethu deal. So that makes them a meaningful player, or all our black shareholders meaningful
ownership.
in ownership going forward. The big difference, though, is there is no lock-in period. So you can trade from day one. So if you do find yourself in a difficult position, you can trade the shares from day one. So I think that's extremely important. Obviously, we'd encourage people to hold on and so they can, they've achieved so much value that they can achieve this kind of value again.
If I'm sitting at home and wonder, can I afford this? How much will one share cost me?
Well, the shares have gone up 42% today, so it's 120 rand for a YeboYethu share today. Okay. It was 86 rand yesterday. So because people are now seeing the value of this new scheme that's been created, you've seen a massive jump in the share price.
How do they go about it?
Well, it's through the BE exchange, which is a JSE, so you can use any broker. And also we have call centers and so on that are available, where you can call the YeboYethu call center, and effectively we can then direct you to the right brokers and so on.